hours across the state of Oklahoma as voters go to the polls for the primary elections. Among those that they're casting votes for, the next governor of Oklahoma. We'll get into all the numbers as we see them at this point. I'm Dave Morris here in the Oklahoman's video studio. Thanks so much for tuning in wherever you may be watching, live on newsok.com, our social media platforms, Facebook, the YouTube, perhaps if you're outside in downtown Oklahoma City on our big screen. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I am joined here at the desk, Justin Wingerter and Ben Felder from the Oklahoman's newsroom. Thank you for your time tonight, gentlemen. And right over here, Miss Kayla Branch joining us. She's interning with us this summer, doing a fine job breaking down the numbers. And Kayla, we'll start with you. What are you seeing numbers-wise?
Great. So we are in kind of the same position that we were in before an hour ago with the Republican governor race. In first place, we've got Mitt Cornett with 27% of the votes. In second place, we have got Todd Lamb with 25% and Kevin Stitt following closely behind with 24%. For the Democratic race, still same place, Drew Edmondson, he has 62% of the vote, and Connie Johnson has 37%. So not an extremely close race there. He's going to, not have that runoff there.
I just checked in with our Grayson Cook, who is at the Mitt Cornett watch party. He says it's very crowded. The race is close. There's not much cheering when the TV shows the percentages. There's got to be 10 TV crews there, he says. You guys' thoughts on what you're hearing so far on this race?
It's about as close as you can get. I mean, everyone was hesitant to predict much of anything in this race, and we see why. I mean, these three candidates vying for 2 spots, it's very close. Political State is a video show / podcast that you can find every Friday on newsok.com, and this is a topic you guys have talked about for months, that these 3 candidates appeared to be emerging above the rest of the crowd there. We're seeing that tonight.
Yeah, I mean, and really, you have 3 candidates that, although they are all Republicans, they probably align on the vast majority of issues. There are some distinct differences that we felt like would appeal to different voters. In Todd Lamb, you have the lieutenant governor, someone who is kind of the political insider, tried to distance himself a little bit from a capital that had become controversial. Mitt Cornett, kind of the more moderate, former mayor of Oklahoma City. And then Stitt, the outsider, really kind of maybe trying to play up that Trump support in some ways as kind of the business outsider wanting to come in and shake things up a little bit. And so, Cornett doing well in Oklahoma City where he needs to do well. Stitt hails from Tulsa, hoping to see a boost right there. One thing I'm paying attention to, besides the fact of just who's going to get in, but really paying attention to Lamb because, I mean, we didn't know that Cornett was going to, you go 2 years ago, we didn't know Cornett was going to run, we didn't know Stitt was going to run, but we probably knew that Lamb was going to run. And this is the guy that had been the front runner out of the gate. In some ways, he would have never said this, but probably felt like maybe this was his race to lose. I mean, lieutenant governor, a spot, kind of a natural.
He's a guy who toured the state, went to every county, raised a lot of money, he had the war chest.
Exactly, and so I think, if he ends up falling, and right now he's in the top 2, but if he were to fall on tonight, I mean, that would be a big disappointment, not just because he lost, but to not make it out of that runoff. And whoever emerges, the 2 of the 3, whoever emerges, is definitely going to make for a very fascinating horse race over the next several weeks to the August runoff.
And the August runoff is August 28th. And Kayla, we'll come back to you for some more numbers.
Great. So the state question, we're still seeing that it's got 56% for the yes for the proposal. It's got 43% against the proposal. But the interesting thing there is that there are almost 560,000 votes in for that, which is, I think, pretty unique. It's much more than all the other races we're seeing with voter turnout. And the next thing that we're seeing for congressional races, we've got the United States Representative District 5. And for the Democrats, we have Kendra Horn. She is leading with 42% of the votes, not followed very closely by Tom Guild with 18%, but still potential for a runoff there. And then for the Republicans, we have Steve Russell, who is the incumbent, and he has swept with 83% of the votes there.
Justin, this is a story you're following.
Yeah, I just got off the phone with the congressman. He's obviously very excited by the victory. No surprise there. The side we were watching was the Democrats. Kendra Horn showing here just how difficult in a 6-person field it is to get that 50+1. We will have a runoff between Horn and Guild, almost certainly. That may be a contentious runoff. I mean, just yesterday, Tom Guild admits to stealing the signs of the yard signs of Kendra Horn.
Justin, we were just talking before we went live here that this video that you got us this morning of Tom Gill allegedly the signs, over 30,000 views. There was a lot of interest in this, and It hits right on Election Day, as it turns out.
Yeah, and we may be talking about it for 2 more months now as these two square off. This is what Horn was hoping to avoid. I mean, I think the Democrats want to coalesce around one candidate right now if they're going to flip this district, which hasn't been a Democratic district since Watergate. And if they're going to flip it, they need to coalesce around one candidate sooner rather than later. And they were hoping to tonight. It will not be the case. We'll have a Democratic runoff.
We mentioned the war chest of Todd Lamb. Kendra Horn raised a lot of funds.
Significant, yeah. And she thought it might be enough tonight. She was really, I mean, she made no bones about it. She was trying to win outright. She came a little short on that. She clearly beats the other candidates and will be a top contender to win the runoff, but falls short of 50% tonight. So looks like we'll have a runoff.
Kayla, back to you.
Great. So the next thing that we want to look at is the Senate race for District 40. And for the Republicans, we have incumbent Irvin Yin with only 41% of votes and Joe Howell with 58%. So right now it's looking like there is not going to be a runoff there. And with the Democratic side of that same race, we have Kerry Hicks with 50% of the votes and Danielle Ezell with 49%. So very, very close there. And one thing that I've been seeing on social media in regards to Irvin Yin, about a week ago, maybe a little bit longer, he had tweeted his opposition to the state question 788 with medical marijuana. And he had gotten some pushback with that. And now I see that his Twitter account has been suspended, so it's no longer available online. But I am seeing a lot of people tweeting at him some very angry things that have to do with his relationship with big pharmaceutical companies around the nation. So that was an interesting thing to be seeing on social media right now.
People taking to Twitter with some snark. Who would have thought?
Yeah, I mean, at 8 o'clock we had Dale in the studio, and he was following the House races, talked about a lot of incumbents that were trailing early. I don't know the results of those ones, but on the Senate side,
14 incumbents, he said.
We saw in the Senate side we have 7 incumbents that are facing challengers. 6 of those 7 right now are leading. This is the one where the incumbent is not. And so you wonder what may be part of that, whether or not it's Yin's opposition to the medical marijuana question. We'll have to see how well that did in his district to see if this is having an impact. But it looks like Joe Howe, the veterinarian running against the medical doctor Irvin Yin, might pull up the lone upset in the Senate. Now on the Democratic side, as Kayla was mentioning, you've got a really tight race between Kerry Hicks and Danielle Ezell. This is going to be an interesting race to watch because out of all the Senate seats, this is the one that Democrats feel like they have the best chance to flip. Senate District 40 is in northwest Oklahoma City. It includes a couple of House seats that Democrats have been successful in flipping in recent years. It's part of a section of the city that seems to be transitioning more from red to blue. And so coming out of this race, whoever wins this Democratic primary race, expect Democrats to put a lot of focus on trying to win this one. And I got to imagine the Democrats are happy to see Senator Yin fall here. They're not going to have to go up against an incumbent. They're going to be taking on someone with lower name recognition. So if you're a Democrat in Senate District 40, depending on who your candidate is for the Democrats, at least on the Republican side, this is probably good news for you. But it looks like Senator Yin will not win re-election, won't survive the primary, and he's the lone incumbent so far that looks like he'll lose a seat in the Senate.
Those election returns, by the way, we were getting that feed from the state election board as soon as they're pushing them out. We're pulling them in on newsok.com, so fairly up-to-date numbers on the state senator District 40 Democrat side, 100 votes separate those two candidates. Kayla, back to you over on our election results desk.
Definitely. So with the superintendent of public instruction, and we only have Republican candidates right now, and we've got Joy Hoffmeister, who's the incumbent. She's got 46.03% of the votes, so she's leading by about 16%, followed by Linda Murphy with 30% of the votes and Will Farrell with 23% of the votes.
But Ben, this is a surprise.
It is a surprise, and then maybe if you think about it closer, it's not. I mean, keep in mind that this is a year where voter frustration towards government is high. Education is probably the central topic of that frustration. We saw teachers shut down schools for 2 weeks. Now, it is surprising in the sense that Hoffmeister, the incumbent state superintendent, by all accounts seems to be still pretty popular with teachers.
We saw her out there at the Capitol quite a bit during those 2 weeks.
She never publicly endorsed the walkout, but she was visible at the Capitol, like you said, with teachers. Teachers seemed to support her. She was maybe, the lone statewide elected official that seemed to be supporting the teachers' efforts. And so going in, you felt like she's vastly outraised her two challengers. She's the incumbent. She's got a lot of popularity with teachers. You would expect her to win and avoid a runoff. She's still in the lead, but it looks like she may not be able to avoid the runoff. But then on the flip side, if you had to ask me, well, why is she not doing as well as you would think? Well, once again, this is a year where a lot of people are frustrated about education. It's not like state superintendent is the office that the majority of Oklahomans can probably tell you much about. If you are a Republican voter going into the ballot box, you don't know much about the state superintendent, but you do know you're frustrated with the state of schools. You may say, hey, I'm not going to vote for the incumbent. If you do know about the incumbent, you may say, well, I wish she would have came out a little bit more heavy against the walkout. We saw candidates for governor and other statewide officials say that they didn't feel like the walkout was in the best interest for the state. You saw them also attacking the union. So once again, while Hofmeister didn't endorse publicly the walkout, she did kind of come across as being on that side, and for some Republican voters, that wasn't something that they wanted to see. So I think you can look at that and say that in a year when education has been really contentious, maybe it's not too surprising that we're headed to a runoff.
We're at that point of the night where it's over 75% of the returns or the precincts reporting, so some of these numbers are starting to really take shape. We do have one final race we want to tell you about, and that's Attorney General.
For sure. This is another race where we only had Republican candidates. And right now we have Mike Hunter, the incumbent, with 44% of the votes, followed by Gentner Drummond with 38% of the votes, and Angela Bonilla following with 16% of the votes, which I know that this was a race that has had a little bit of fire in it.
It's been no shortage of fire in this race, as Kayla alludes to there. Perhaps that's the candidate of the night right there, is Angela Bonilla forcing a runoff between these two guys.
Yeah, she's going to come in last, but it looks like she's going to have an impact on this race.
16%, that's a hefty percentage.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, this AG's race, which has been kind of nasty at times, 6 more weeks of winter, it looks like on this one is we're going to have a runoff in August.
Interesting stuff. We also have Jordan Evans out at the watch party for State Question 788. This will come as no surprise. She reports it's packed, lots of wooing, live music, people are happy. There you go.
Yeah, and it's a more than a 10-point lead right now for the state question. If that holds, I mean, that'll be a decisive victory. After a couple weeks of where we saw the opposition advertising really flow in heavy, it doesn't seem to have had the impact that it intended. So right now it looks like medical marijuana may become a reality in Oklahoma, and as Dale said earlier tonight, if the state question passes, we're going to see the legislature have to kick it into high gear to come back to the Capitol and figure a few things out.
Final two races there we talked about, State Question 788 and the Attorney General's race. Both saw a lot of money pour into those campaigns there towards the end. That'll wrap it up for our 9 p.m. update. We'll be back live on newsok.com, our social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, the big screen outside, just in case you happen to be downtown at 10 p.m. You can watch us there as well. More election coverage coming up on newsok.com tonight.